should say this audience looks a bit like America. It's divided.
Well, no, it goes back 12 hours, I guess.
Some support Joe Biden, and some say they are truly undecided. We're going to get a mix of questions on a range of topics, and we're going to get to those questions
think Trump
in a moment.
is,
but first,
like, the strength of the questions directed at Trump are not going to matter, because he's just going to gish gallop. He's just going to say things that don't matter.
We send our best to the First Lady and to Barron.
Also, the audio quality is terrible.
Symptoms from COVID?
Nothing whatsoever. I'm great. I feel good. I was in North Carolina today and did a big rally. We had a tremendous turnout, and just feel really good. Florida, Pennsylvania, we're all over the place. It's been great.
You received some treatments that are generally reserved for those with the most severe form of the disease.
I'm very comfy right now.
How severe were your symptoms? In particular, did you have pneumonia?
Well, I'll tell you what happened. I didn't feel good. I didn't feel strong. I had a little bit of a temperature. The doctors at the White House are fantastic, as you can imagine, and they really didn't want to take a chance, and they said,
yeah, Barron has COVID,
okay.
but he's asymptomatic. It's okay.
Respond to what you say. And
as long as he's not spreading it to everyone else.
Tremendous professionals. They gave me Regeneron and Remdesivir both. And all I know is I felt good the following day. I felt really good.
Did the doctors ever tell you that they saw pneumonia on your lung scans?
No, but they said the lungs are, a little bit different, a little bit perhaps infected. And
infected with?
I don't know. I mean, I didn't do too much asking. I really felt good. I didn't do too much asking. I did have a little bit of a temperature. Obviously, I felt there was something missing, and then I tested positive.
Well, let's talk about testing, because there's a little bit of confusion about this, and I think we can clear it up.
Yeah, and there shouldn't.
Your first positive test was Thursday, October 1st, okay? When was your last negative test? When did you last remember having a negative test?
Well, I test quite a bit, and I can tell you that before the debate, which I thought it was a very good debate, and I felt fantastically. I had no problem before.
Did you test the day of the debate?
I don't know. I don't even remember. I test all the time. But I can tell you this. After the debate, like I guess a day or so, I think it was Thursday evening, maybe even late Thursday evening, I tested positive. That's when I first found out about it.
Back to the debate, because the debate commission's rules, it was the honor system, would be that you would come with a negative test. You say you don't know if you got a test on the day of the debate?
I had no problem. Again, the doctors do it. I don't ask them. I test all the time, and
did you take a test though on the day of the debate?
If you ask the doctor, they'll give you a perfect answer. But they take a test, and I leave, and I go about my business.
Did you take a test on the day of the debate? I guess is the bottom line.
I probably did, and I took a test the day before, and the day before.
Yeah, he's not getting tested. Holy shit!
Great shape for the debate, and it was only after the debate, like a period of time after the debate, that I said, that's interesting, and they took a test, and it tested positive.
So just to button it up, do you take a test every single day?
No, but I take a lot of tests.
Okay, and you don't know if you took a test the day of the debate?
Possibly I did, possibly I didn't. But the doctor is very accurate information, and it's not only that doctor, it's many doctors. The one thing, if you're president...
Okay, but the doctors also are answering the questions.
But I was in great shape for the debate. And sometime after the debate, I tested positive.
Let's talk about...
That's when they decided to let's go.
Okay, good.
These hard-hitting questions that he can't answer.
Let's talk about the event that was held at the White House on the Saturday before you tested positive. Subsequent to that, 13 people connected to that event tested positive. There was an outdoor reception. You've seen the pictures. There was an indoor reception. People were not wearing masks. My question to you is, at this point in the pandemic, knowing what we know, shouldn't you have known better? Shouldn't the White House know better than to hold an event like that?
Well, they do a lot of testing in the White House. They test everybody, including
clearly not enough.
And something happened, but as far as the mask is concerned, I'm good with masks. I'm okay with masks. I tell people wear masks.
But no one was wearing them.
With the statement that 85% of the people that wear masks catch it. So, this is a very that's what I heard, and that's what I saw. And regardless,
holy shit, this misinformation.
And they tested often, and I also knew that, hey, I'm president. I have to see people. I can't be in a basement. I can't be in a room. I have to be out.
You can see people with a mask, though, right?
I can, but people with masks are catching it all the time. I mean,
this is, by the way, this is not a hard hit.
He's known for a mask. If you look at Tom Tillis, a a great guy. He always had a
Very
mask,
simple question.
Well, there are pictures of Tom Tillis actually with one of Judge Barrett's kids not wearing a mask. But, Chris Christie, he was part of your debate prep.
Yeah.
He was, I believe, at that event. He came out tonight. He was sick, very sick. He was in the hospital for about a week.
I know
He
that.
came out tonight and said, I was wrong not to wear a mask.
Well, I mean, he has to say that. I think it's great. He's a friend of mine. He's a good guy. And wrong or not wrong. You have to
He has to say
as
that?
president, I can't be locked in a room someplace for the next year and just
No
say
one's
and do
saying
nothing.
that you
And
lock
every time I go
yourself into a
job,
room. Just wear a mask.
I was with the parents of our
It's really not that difficult.
These people are the most incredible people. And they came up to me and they would hug me and they would touch me. And I'm not going to not let them do it,
Now,
to be
there
honest.
was an event
You're the
with Gold Star
president.
families the
Don't
day
let
after
them
the
do
Supreme
that.
Court
Gold
event.
Star event with the most incredible
It's
people you've ever
100%
seen.
within your power
And
not
I could
to
have
let them
chosen
not do
to
that.
talk to him or to keep everybody away. And you know what? And I don't think that's probably where it was caught, but maybe it
Well, I was
was.
going to say, you bring it up. You brought it up yourself. I mean, are you trying to suggest that? Do you believe a grieving military family gave you COVID?
No, I don't know where it came from.
Okay.
And you don't know where it came from, and the doctors don't know where it came from. But as the president, I have to be out there. I also know.
Well, there's no one that says you can't be out there, but it's just about wearing masks and having, for example, your
But I
rallies.
know this.
Your rallies
As
don't
an
require
example-
masks.
I know this, but I just don't wear
She's got
masks,
People now,
okay?
people have it, and I'm not blaming her. I'm not saying, oh, she did a terrible thing. As president, I have to be out there.
That's
I
not-
can't
but
be in
this
a
has nothing to
basement.
do
I
with the
can't be locked in a
question.
very beautiful room someplace in the White House. And I want to see the Gold Star families, and I want to see everybody. And I also say that
You guys, you understand that, like, what he's talking about is absolute lunacy and doesn't have anything to do with what she's asking him, right? Like, you understand that she's not asking him if he would lock himself away in a room. She's asking him if he should just wear a mask and, like, make that part of his messaging. It's not that complicated.
to people all the time, it's risky doing it. It is risky doing
But
it.
as
It's risky
president,
seeing people.
you're right. You don't want to. You want to be a leader, but you also are a leader and a setter of an example. And if you're not wearing a mask when your administration is saying best practice right now is wear.
I also just want to remind you that this is a town hall, and we've been watching it for like over 5 to 10 minutes. And we haven't gotten to the town hall part. We've just been on this lady asking him if he could wear a mask and when his last negative test result was. And he couldn't even give her an answer on that. Like, sure, okay, maybe he does get tested all the time, but when was the last negative test result? Why can't he say, yeah, like 3 weeks ago, somewhere around there? He can't even give her a window.
a mask. No, it's not foolproof.
But many
that
people
will
are catching it. Many people are getting this disease that was sent to us by China, and it's
Wearing even just a cloth mask reduces COVID-19 transmission by over 60%. So, like, yeah, many people are going to get it. Even if you're wearing a mask, you could still transmit it. But there's a significant difference between wearing a mask and not wearing a mask. That's why wearing a mask, while people are still going to die between now and the end of the year, that's why the CDC is saying if everyone wore a mask, we could like reduce the number of deaths that are going to happen by 100,000. Okay? Also, hello, Riot Girl Callie.
shouldn't have been allowed to happen. But many people are getting this. And I mean, nobody's being blamed. Everybody is working hard to get this thing out of our country, get it out of the world. Look at what's going on in Europe. Massive spikes. They've done a very good job. But now you take a look today at the UK, you take a look at...
Do you know why there are massive spikes in Europe, by the way? Because A, most scientists predicted a second wave, and B, those countries did a much better job of containing the coronavirus. So, because there are so many fewer cases, that means that the possibility of transmission is actually much higher.
Spain and France and Italy, there's tremendous spikes.
But our death rate is worse than, well, not Spain, but those
Well,
other
I
countries.
have things right here that will tell you exactly the opposite.
Me too.
So the UK is up 2,500%, because I knew you'd be doing this. I know you very well. The UK...
Well, so when he's talking about percentages, it can go up by that much more because they had so few cases before. So, like, This is very frustrating misinformation, but it's evidence of him and his administration manipulating the data to make it seem like other countries are doing just as poorly as we are, when in fact the death rate, even with that massive spike in the UK, is still going to be significantly less than the 200,000 plus we have in the US.
Is up 2,500%. The EU's up 722%, and the United States is down 21%.
But we have, our deaths per capita is among the highest among industrialists.
Excess mortality, we're a winner.
Welcome, the real Andy91. Happy to have you here.
On the excess mortality, and what we've done has been amazing, and we have done an amazing job. And
200,000 people have died,
and we have the vaccines coming, and we have the therapies
more than anywhere else on the planet.
I'll tell you what, one thing, when I got it, I had a choice: do nothing or use some of the things that we're looking at, like in this case Regeneron.
Yeah.
And Eli Lilly makes something that's supposed to be incredible. And I think that maybe I wouldn't be doing this discussion with you right now. We have therapies now and cures. Maybe you can use the word cure, but we have therapies.
No, we do not have cures. That's another piece of misinformation. We do not have cures for COVID-19. If we had cures for COVID-19, it would be plastered all over the news 24/7, unless you believe in some sort of insane conspiracy theory.
Absolutely incredible.
I want to pick up on something you just said. You said we're rounding the corner.
I believe we're rounding the corner.
Now, 10% of the country.
Also, he's been saying we're rounding the corner and that the disease will disappear like a miracle for literally since this thing started.
Approximately has had COVID. That means 80, 90%, let's do the math, is still vulnerable.
Right.
There's been some talk, including from the White House lately, that perhaps it approves of what's called herd immunity. That's where you basically just let young people and everybody get sick. You try to protect the old people and those who are sick, and hopefully it gets up to a certain level, and now we're all immune.
Yeah.
So let's just be clear about it. It also means more deaths. Do you support herd immunity as a strategy? Essentially just let people get sick.
The cure cannot be worse than the problem itself. We did the right thing. We were expected to lose 2,200,000 people and maybe more than that. We're at 210,000 people. One person is too much. It should have never happened because of China. It happened because of China.
No, it happened because of the way we brought people back from China after the outbreak happened in China. And you know what? Pandemics happen all of the time. So, like, for example, the 1917 Spanish flu epidemic, it initially occurred in Kansas, okay? That's one of the things you don't hear about a whole lot. Okay? Pandemics can just happen. They arise naturally. That's why most governments in the world have some sort of pandemic response plan. So, like, his argument here is that China failed in some way to protect the rest of the world, when in reality what happened was when we brought people back from China who were staying in China at the time of the outbreak, we actually didn't even give them PPE to, like, prevent, like, spread on the plane. So then, when they got back, we also didn't quarantine them. And so those people went out and spread COVID-19 to their friends and family, and from there it just grew exponentially. And we didn't take any of the measures to lock down the infected areas until it was too late. And now the only thing that we could do, if we were really committed to ending the COVID-19 pandemic, would be to lock down the country federally, entirely, for, 2, 3, 4 weeks, and pay people to stay home and not go to work. We could end it, by the way. We could end this pandemic, but we choose not to because of the economic effects that might have. But also, the economic effects of not doing anything are far worse and far longer lasting than if we just properly shut down the country. Well, yeah, boss, people were calling him racist when he stopped travel from China, but can you blame him when he ran on a campaign of stopping travel to other countries based on Muslim faith. Like, yeah, he is a racist, but maybe in the case of stopping travel from China, we can give him a small pass on that. But he also would get more credit for that if he had done anything else aside from stopping travel from China. And also, if there weren't so many loopholes for business people traveling to the US from China, despite that stoppage. So, like, you know, credit where credit's due, but also he did a bad job of doing that as well.
And you have to get that and understand that. But it shouldn't have happened. But we were expected to lose. If you look at the original charts from original doctors who are respected by everybody, 2,200,000
That
people.
2 million figure, though, is if you
We
literally
saved 2
did
million
nothing.
people.
The 2 million figure is if you did absolutely nothing. It would.
And also, the pandemic's not over yet, so we could very well still lose 1 million people, 2 million people by the time this pandemic subsides. So it still remains to be seen whether or not we'll actually hit that 2 million figure.
Be 2 million.
If
The
we-
question is,
if
should
we did-
the deaths be better than 200?
Well, yeah, boss, COVID did start in China, but also yesterday I spent a whole long time talking about how, like, thinking that this is some sort of Chinese conspiracy is absolute lunacy. Like, what, you think that they purposely released a virus in the middle of nowhere in China and then purposely didn't respond to it correctly so that it would then, while infecting their own people, would infect American travelers who would be called back, and that the response during the callback would be so poor on the part of the United States that we wouldn't take any precautions bringing them back or releasing them back into the public, and that from there it would spread across the United States because of increasingly poor and inept responses to the pandemic. Do you think that that was, like, the actual Chinese plan? Or do you think it's more likely that this is just a pandemic that showed up and then the Trump administration, like they've done so many other things, just bumbled it to hell? And, oh, okay, so you do think it is a giant Chinese conspiracy. Okay, well then you're just a crazy person. Like, you're not getting your information from unbiased sources. You're getting your info from, like, crazy lunatics who think that China masterminds complex Rube Goldbergian machines that like are like just sending through, like, coronavirus instead of those little silver marble balls. Like, it's insane. You realize that, like, viruses and pandemics just happen, right? Like, HIV and AIDS wasn't a complex conspiracy on the part of, like, African countries to infect the United States' queer population, right? Like, you realize pandemics happen. And the example I gave the other day is, it's not like some Persian prince, like, had an alchemist develop the bubonic plague and, like, threw it on some English traders and then infected the entirety of Europe with the bubonic plague. Like, no, pandemics happen. That's why governments have pandemic response plans, which is why when we got hit by a pandemic under Trump and he had just thrown out our entire pandemic response plan and strategies and teams, we got hit by it real hard, much harder than any other country on earth. It's not rocket science.
100,000 when
I don't
relative to the
know.
rest
Let
of the
me
world
tell
we
you
have a
what is
worse
happening.
death rate.
I left North Carolina, which I love. I left Pennsylvania. We won a big case in Michigan because that governor has a lockdown where nobody but her husband can do anything. He can go boating and do whatever he wants, but nobody else can. The fact is, we're winning all these cases because it's unconstitutional what they're doing. And I think that.
Yeah, the governor, by the way, that he's talking about was just targeted by terrorists for a kidnapping plot in which they were going to murder police officers and possibly set off explosives as well and blow up bridges. And he doesn't even acknowledge that in his answer here. Like, they were even targeting her explicitly because they viewed her quote-unquote overreach during the coronavirus response to be a bridge too far. Literally, they listed her closing down of gyms as a reason for why they wanted to kidnap her for a quote-unquote trial in the middle of the woods somewhere. Like, but he still continues with this rhetoric, despite the fact that there are terrorists targeting people on his say-so. And you know what this is called? There's actually a term for this. It's called stochastic terrorism. It's where a celebrity or a talking head or a politician will give out, like, say, yeah, these people are destroying our civilization. These people are basically committing murder. And, like, their rhetoric paints others as like enemies of the people, right? To quote a Trump phrase. So then is it any wonder that when people watch them and believe that their country is under attack, that they believe it's their duty to do something insane like taking up arms and kidnapping people or killing people? But because there is that divide and he's not explicitly saying, you need to take up arms and overthrow the governor, there is that plausible deniability. That's what stochastic terrorism is. China didn't tell anyone about it. China killed doctors who tried to warn the US. We went over this the other day. The doctor that put out a warning on social media and was reprimanded for it died from the coronavirus, my dude, because he worked in a hospital that was currently dealing with the pandemic. So yeah, he died from the coronavirus. That has been widely reported, and debunked. On top of that, like, China didn't tell anyone about it right at first, partly because they don't want to look bad on on like the international stage. But you know why? Like they knew at a certain point they couldn't contain it, and at that point they told the world about it. They're on the UN fucking Security Council. Like, it's not like they can just hide tens of millions of people getting infected, okay? Like, China does have a very strong centralized government, but they don't have a centralized government that's that strong. So, like, yeah, they tried to hide it initially, but you know what would have really helped? It would have really helped if Trump hadn't dismantled our early warning detection team that we had stationed in China specifically for pandemics. So, like, again, at every step of this, even the one that you're pointing out of China not reporting on it or whatever, we would have had a leg up on it if Trump hadn't dismantled our our pandemic response. There would have been a team in China to respond to this quickly on the ground and figure it out, whether or not China was trying to hide it. Like, all of your ideas here are based in conspiratorial nonsense.
Doing it for political reasons, but the fact is the cure.
And also, like, I can't necessarily convince you that it's based in conspiratorial nonsense because you've bought into it completely. But again, I implore you to like, go out of your bubble and find yourself reputable sources that back you up, because right now you're on the level of, like, quoting outdated Fox News articles that have since been quietly updated, or B, quoting, like, Alex Jones level shenanigans about, like, frogs turning gay. Like, that's the level of informational reliability you are expressing in your comments.
You can't let this continue to go on with the lockdowns.
Well, most
and I
of the
believe
states,
that on November 4th, you're going to have a lot of these governors. Look at what's happening to New York. New York is a mess.
Yep. Boss, they have over 1 million Muslims in concentration camps in China. Like, the way China treats the Uyghur population is abysmal and awful, but it has nothing to do with their pandemic response. You understand that those are two completely unrelated things, and that you bringing up the other one is just muddying the waters for the first one. So if you're going to argue about one thing, stick to arguing that one thing instead of throwing in an unrelated fact, okay?
They lost almost 40,000 people. They have a lockdown like you've never seen. Now they're open. It's like a ghost town.
Let's get
and Savannah, it's very important. People are leaving New York by the thousands. And you're going to have a hard time ever building it up again. That cure, that so-called cure that you talk about, it can't be worse than the problem. The problem
Do you know why these places are turning into ghost towns? It's because the lockdowns on a statewide level or a citywide level are not as effective as locking down the entire country at one time. So, like, if a city or a state locks down and the lockdown then lifts, people still aren't going to feel comfortable going out to restaurants because there's still going to be people who are breaking the lockdown or going out to, like, crossing state lines, crossing city lines to, go out and experience nightlife and interact with other people and catch the coronavirus. So the coronavirus, in a non-coordinated national lockdown, is still out there. And so people are still scared of going out and getting infected. So the fact that he is unwilling to call for a national lockdown is why there is still an ongoing problem. It's why these towns are still ghost towns despite lockdown attempts. Now, lockdowns did slow down for a while the coronavirus spread, but they're not as effective as a coordinated national lockdown, which we haven't gotten.
Is a bad problem.
We've got more questions on COVID, so let's drop it for now. We were supposed to, as mentioned, be watching you on a debate stage right now. We're not doing that, so let's clear up a few things from the last one. You were asked point blank to denounce white supremacy. In the moment, you didn't. You asked some follow-up questions. Who specifically? A couple of days later, on a different show, you denounced white supremacy.
No,
my question to you is,
you've done this to me and everybody.
Why does it seem like
I denounced white supremacy, okay?
You did
I
2 days
denounced
later.
white supremacy for years, but you always do it. You always start off with a question. You didn't ask Joe Biden.
Look, no matter how many times you're asked to denounce white supremacy, it should always be an easy question, right? Like, I denounce white supremacy. It's not that hard. If someone asked me to do that every single day, I could do it. Not a big deal. So the fact that he's getting really defensive about this is kind of telling.
Whether or not he denounces Antifa, I watched him on the same basic show with Lester Holt, and he was asking questions like Biden was a child.
Well, so this is a little bit of a dodge.
Are you listening? I denounce white supremacy.
Okay.
What's your next question?
Do you feel, it feels sometimes you're hesitant to do so, like you wait a beat.
Here we go again. Every time, in fact, my people came, I'm sure they'll ask you the white supremacy question. I denounce white supremacy.
Okay.
And frankly, you want to know something? I denounce Antifa, and I denounce these people on the left that are burning down our cities that are run by Democrats.
By the way, Antifa and, like, the left aren't burning down cities. Do you know, in total, like, the amount of damage that has been caused by, like, the fires that are raging, that were raging during the protests? Do you know that the amount of damage in monetary terms that was caused is pales in comparison to how much New York City spends in paying out claims to victims of police violence in just the settlements, right? Like, I'm gonna look this up real quick. And chat, I want to see you guess how much New York City pays in settlements to victims of police violence, okay? There we go. $1 billion, $210 million. Well, Archangel the Cub, it's not $1 billion. However, it is $250 million, at least as of 2018. So, yeah, Antifa hasn't done that much damage. Even if you attribute all of the fires to Antifa, which I would caution you not to do since there isn't necessarily evidence that Antifa started all of those fires. There are also white supremacists, Boogaloo Boys, the police themselves who have been instigating an awful lot of violence and property damage. So, like, yeah, it's not just the radical left, okay? Boss, yeah, well, boss, also there are black Nazis, so, like, the presence of black people in certain organizations is not necessarily an indication that they're not racist.
Don't
All
know
right,
what
while
they're
we're
doing.
denouncing, let me ask you about QAnon. It is this.
Like, you do realize the Proud Boys were literally founded by a neo-Nazi, right? Like, yeah, they're a bit, they're a bit, by and large, against black people. Just a bit. With their neo-Nazi roots.
Theory that Democrats are a satanic pedophile ring and that you are the savior of that.
Oh, QAnon.
Now, can you just once and for all state that that is completely not true
So,
and that
I know-
disavow QAnon in its entirety?
I know nothing about QAnon.
I just
I
told you.
know very little. You told me, but what you tell me doesn't necessarily make it fact. I hate to say that. I know nothing about it. I do know they are very much against pedophilia. They fight it very hard, but I know nothing about it.
They believe it is
If
a
you'd like
satanic
me to
cult run by the deep
study the
state.
subject, I'll tell you what I do know about. I know about Antifa, and I know about the radical left, and I know how violent they are and how vicious they are, and I know how they're burning down cities run by Democrats, not run by
Republican
Republicans.
Senator Ben Sass said, quote, QAnon is nuts and real leaders call conspiracy theories conspiracy theories.
He may be
Why not
right.
just say
By the way, just so you know, there's only ever been one death attributed to Antifa. One death. Do you know how many deaths have been attributed to Boogaloo Boys and like far right white supremacists? It's a whole lot more than one, friends. There's a reason why the FBI has listed white nationalists and far right militiamen and as like the most dangerous terroristic threats to the United States. Okay. Also, I don't call everyone on the right Nazis. I call a lot of people on the right fascists because they buy into the rhetoric of this man who is in fact a fascist.
it's
Can I be
crazy and
honest?
not true?
He may be right. I just don't know about QAnon.
You do know.
I don't know. No, I don't know.
Look, he's been asked multiple times about QAnon. He's been told by the press that he's talking to about QAnon. There is no possible way he has not been briefed on a national level about QAnon, one of the largest online movements that is in his favor. So, like, him saying this right now is just blatantly not true. It's blatantly not true. He knows what QAnon is. He's just not disavowing them because they support him. Hey, Foidoy, can you also tell me how many police officers have injured and or killed Antifa members? Can you tell me that? Because I'm going to reckon that the police, for the course of these protests, have injured far more than 30 plus Antifa protesters, okay? And probably far more than 30 plus peaceful protesters. So, like, yeah, remember several people had their eyes shot out, had their limbs blasted off by grenades. Yeah, like, yeah, the police are not the ones in danger here. Also, it's not a criminal offense to exercise your First Amendment right. I'm sorry you placed more emphasis on the Second Amendment than the First Amendment, but the first one is actually more important. That's why it's the first one.
I don't know.
Let me ask you another thing.
Let's waste a whole show. You start off with white supremacy. I denounce it. You start off with something else. Let's go. Keep asking me these questions.
Okay. I do have one more in this vein.
Let me just tell you, what I do hear about it is they are very strongly against pedophilia. And I agree with that. I mean, I do agree with that, and I agree with it.
But there's not a satanic...
That's why he was friends with Jeffrey Epstein, and why he frequently brags about how he was able to look at underage girls naked in changing rooms in the pageants that he owned. Yeah, he's very against pedophilia. You know, just best friends with the most famous pedophile of all time. You know, no big deal.
Pedophile.
I have no idea. I know nothing
You don't know
about
that? Okay.
No, I don't know
You
that.
just this
neither
week.
do you know that.
Okay, just this week you
Why aren't
retweeted
you asking me about Antifa? Why aren't you...
all conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories.
He may be
Why not
right.
just say it's
Can I be
crazy and
honest?
not true?
He may be right. I just don't know about QAnon.
You do know.
I don't know. No, I don't know. I don't know.
Let me
tell
ask you
all
another
about
thing.
it. Let's waste a whole show. You start off with white supremacy. I denounce
True,
it. You start off
Jose of
with something
Scranton.
else.
Jose of Scranton. Everyone should be an anti-fascist. It's true. Foidoy, there is no evidence of Joe Biden being a pedophile. Unlike the self-admitted statements of Donald Trump, which clearly indicate a predilection for pedophilia. Also, he was literally sued by someone who was a child who claimed that he raped her. Okay? Yeah, but boss, understand that Bill Clinton is not who we're talking about here. We don't give a shit about Bill Clinton. I give a shit about the two candidates. Now, it's true, Joe Biden has been creepy around children, but you know what? Being creepy around children isn't the same as being a literal pedophile, which, I'd go out on a limb and say that, Donald Trump is far closer to being a literal pedophile, what with his association with Jeffrey Epstein, famously quoted as saying that that he and Epstein shared a love of young girls. And, you know, again, bragging about seeing naked children, and openly talking about sexually assaulting women. He has like 26 sexual assault allegations against him, one of which includes his ex-wife. Yeah, just gonna say, that's way more overwhelming evidence that indicates that he might be a pedophile than what exists against Joe Biden, okay?
Let's go. Keep asking me these questions.
I do have one more in this vein.
Let me just tell you, what I do hear about it is they are very strongly against pedophilia. And I agree with that. I mean, I do agree with that, and I agree with it.
But there's not
very
a satanic pedophile
I have
cult
no
being run
idea.
by.
I know
You
nothing
don't
about
know
that.
Okay.
No, I don't know
You
that.
just
and
this
neither
week.
do you know that.
Okay, just this week
Why
you
aren't
retweeted.
you asking me about Antifa? Why aren't you asking me
'Cause you
about the
just-
radical left?
because you're
Why aren't
volunteering
you
it.
asking Joe Biden questions about why doesn't he condemn Antifa?
Well,
Why
she's
does he
not-
say it
she's
doesn't
not
exist?
interviewing
Because
Joe
you're
Biden.
interviewing
Antifa, no, she's so cute. Antifa exists. They're vicious, they're violent, they kill people, and they're burning down our cities. And they happen to be radical left.
Just this week, you retweeted to your 87 million followers a conspiracy theory that Joe Biden orchestrated to have
Oh, yeah.
SEAL Team 6, the Navy SEAL Team 6, killed to cover up.
By the way, done randomly, just so you know, I did look into trying to get the captioning program that you mentioned. However, it didn't seem to work with my microphone for some reason. So, oh, Foidoy, we already watched the Biden town hall on stream. You missed that. But we did watch the entire thing.
The fake death of bin Laden. Now, why would you send a lie
I know
like that
nothing
to your
about
followers?
it.
You
Can I-
retweeted
That was
it.
a retweet. That was an opinion of somebody, and that was a retweet. I'll put it out there. People can
I
decide for
don't get
themselves.
that.
I
You're
don't
the
take a
president.
position.
You're not like someone's crazy uncle who can just retweet whatever.
That was a retweet, and I do a lot of retweets. And frankly, because the media is so fake and so...
You're the president of the United States. You shouldn't just be willy-nilly retweeting people. Like, there's a reason that, for example, Obama had people who were handling his tweets for him. It was so that they could go through and make sure that he wasn't tweeting stuff that might inadvertently endorse awful things, like, for example, a white supremacist.
So corrupt. If I didn't have social media, I don't call it Twitter, I call it social media, I wouldn't be able to get the word out. And the word is false. And you know what the word is? The word is very simple. We're building our country stronger and better than it's ever been before.
So, again, I need to point out that this is what fascists do. So he is saying, what I use social media for is building up our country bigger, better, stronger, faster than ever before. While the media, the people who, are working on disseminating accurate information, are like, but wait, that's not what you're doing. You're retweeting and spreading blatantly false information. And then he denies that. Despite the fact that the things he retweets are frequently like hoaxes or, misinformation campaigns. For example, we covered this on the stream, but the Ilhan Omar stuff with Project Veritas. Project Veritas literally paid off one of the main people in their Sting video to show that there was illegal ballot harvesting happening in Minnesota. They literally paid someone $10,000 to lie on camera. And also, one of the other main people in that video was a known criminal, and B, has a history of saying untrue things for right-wing groups to use as sound bites. Like that's basically how he makes a living. So like that was the entirety of that Project Veritas video, and our president retweeted it, despite the fact that then like a day or two later it was revealed to be almost entirely a hoax. So like, and of course when he retweets it, he doesn't then like go back and correct it later when it's revealed to be false. Instead he sticks to his guns and he talks about how no, he's not spreading misinformation, he's building up the country. That's a fascist tactic.
And that's what's happening, and everybody knows it.
Okay, we got a bunch of questions for you.
We're winning in a lot of states.
Okay.
We're winning in a lot of states.
Let me ask, okay, I'm glad you brought up the election because I do want to ask about that. That's another kind of leftover item. A lot of people have asked you, will you accept a peaceful transfer of power? You have said repeatedly, the only way we lose this election is if it is rigged. Now, that is simply not true. The fact is either candidate can lose fair and square without ballot fraud. And so will you accept the results of the election?
That's the way I want it to be. But when I see thousands of ballots, right, unsolicited ballots being given out by the millions, and thousands of them...
There are not millions of ballots going out that are, like, illegal ballots. There are states that have unsolicited ballots that get sent out. That's a thing that their state does, because each state handles elections a little bit differently. Now, what he talks about when he talks about ballots going out, or like ballots getting misplaced, he's literally referencing like 2 or 3 different stories. One about a deranged mailman who, in an effort to support Trump, was collecting all of the ballots in mail, and then he tried to throw them away in garbage bags to be collected by the garbage men. And of course, they were later found and traced back to him. He got caught, and then the post office delivered all of that mail to the proper addresses, okay? So that's one of the stories. One of the other stories that he continually references and blows out of proportion is a story about ballots being misplaced on a military base. And that's a grand total of 9 ballots, 7 of which were for him. It's not thousands of ballots, it's 9 ballots on one military base. But he extrapolates that story to be talking about millions of ballots, millions. This is a rigged election. One of the other stories he talks about is in, I believe, North Carolina, they sent out about 50,000 ballots, which is a large number. But you know what ended up happening with that? They sent out 50,000 ballots that were printed by a third-party company that gets contracted with by the state to print out these ballots. And the ballots that they printed out and sent out were misprints that could not have been used to actually vote in the election. So then they had to send out 50,000 new ballots, which they did. End of the story. But he's making it seem like, oh, people got sent out multiple ballots, there's a vast conspiracy going on, when really, in reality, this is just the whoopsie-daisy of an average bureaucracy, okay? It's not that complicated, there's no grand conspiracy, and every single Republican-led commission that has been put together to establish that there's voter fraud, because they desperately, desperately want voter fraud to be a real thing, has found that there is no significant or meaningful amount of voter fraud that takes place in the United States. So all of this is just malarkey that he is using to try and build up this narrative, this fascist narrative, that the election won't be valid, so that then he can contest the election results and hold on to power despite losing the election, okay? That's what he's doing. There's no other reason for him to be making up these lies and blowing these stories out of proportion. He is a fascist who wants to maintain his power. That's what he's going to try and do. So, like, I'm sorry to you, those of you who are mauling in chat about this, but this is what a fascist does, and that's why he is so staunchly against what this interviewer is asking him in these very simple, very straightforward questions.
Dumped in dumps.
I'm sorry, I did steal Biden's malarkey phrase. Sorry about that. It's because I was watching so much of Biden, like old shoe leather got in my brain, okay?
And when you see ballots with the name Trump, military ballots from our great military,
yeah, look at that.
They're dumped in garbage cans.
That is a handful. We could go all night, which we won't.
No,
but we
it's
could go all
happening
night,
every day.
one by one, a single case, a single day. You're talking about 150 million votes. Your own FBI director says there is no evidence of widespread fraud.
Well, then he's not doing a very good job. All you have to do is pick up the papers every day. 50,000 in Ohio, the great state of Ohio. 50,000 in another location, I think North Carolina. 500,000 applications in Virginia. No, there's a tremendous problem. But let me just tell you, they talk about the peaceful.
He literally just listed like two of the three cases that I told you about. Okay, like I feel like I proved my point there.
They spied on my campaign and they got caught, and they spied heavily on my campaign, and they tried to take down a duly elected sitting president. And then they talk about, will you accept a peaceful transfer? And the answer is yes, I will. But I want it to be an honest election, and so does everybody else. When I see thousands of ballots dumped in a garbage can and they happen to have my name on it, I'm not happy about it.
Again, not thousands of ballots dumped in a garbage can. 9 ballots.
Right, but just those are there is in fact no evidence of widespread fraud, and you were so in doubt about our democracy.
How can you say that? You do read newspapers.
You know what? Let me just pull this up for you, okay? Oh, look. Report, Trump Commission did not find widespread voter fraud. One of his own commissions from 2018. Look at this. Now disbanded Voting Integrity Commission launched by the Trump administration uncovered no evidence to support claims of widespread voter fraud, according to an analysis of administration documents released Friday. In a letter to Vice President Mike Pence, the Kansas Secretary of State, Chris Kobach, who are both Republicans and led the commission, Maine Secretary of State Matthew Dunlap said the documents showed there was a preordained outcome and that drafts of a commission report included a section of evidence of voter fraud that was glaringly empty. It's calling into the darkness looking for voter fraud, Dunlap, a Democrat, told the Associated Press. There's no real evidence of it anywhere. President Donald Trump convened the commission to investigate the 2016 presidential election after making unsubstantiated claims that between 3 million and 5 million ballots were illegally cast. Critics, including Dunlap, rejected his claims of widespread voter fraud. The Trump administration last month complied with a court order to turn over documents from the Voting Integrity Commission to Dunlap. The commission met just twice and has not issued a report. And I need to remind you, it met twice, has not issued a report, and at the time of this article, had then disbanded. Okay? And again, it was led by the Vice President Mike Pence and Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach, which, if you don't know his history in politics, has been built almost entirely around calling into question the legitimacy of elections. So, like, yeah, these two people who are heavily motivated to find voter fraud couldn't find anything worth reporting on and dissolved the commission. And then when the documents that, like, compiled of their investigation were finally revealed by a court order, there wasn't anything in the evidence to show voter fraud section of these documents, okay? So, like, this is, again, Trump's own commission. Trump's own commission couldn't find evidence of voter fraud, and it includes Mike Pence, who is also part of the president's re-election bid. So is he saying his own vice president couldn't find evidence of voter fraud and is also wrong? Like, at every step of the way, if you look into this issue, oh yeah, Jose of Scranton. The 9 ballots that were dumped were found in the garbage, and they don't know how they got there, but they were properly submitted after they were found. So yeah, there we go. Let's see. Yeah, Kobach said there has been more than 1,000 convictions for voter fraud since 2000, and that the commission presented 8,400 instances of double voting in the 2016 election in 20 states. Okay, even if we double this number, even if we triple this number, okay? Let's say there are 26,000 instances of double voting. That's 26,000 more votes in an election where 150 million people vote. So, like, and then you're also dividing that among like the 1,000 existing convictions up until 2018. That's like a handful of convictions every year for illegal voting. Okay, like when we're talking about what Trump is claiming, millions upon millions of illegal votes, of fraudulent votes, that's not happening. Because if it was, this commission would have touted it until the day we all died. But that didn't happen. Because voter fraud is not a widespread problem, okay? It's just not. So when he's talking about this, he's lying to you. And he's lying to you because he's a fascist who wants to hold on to power.
You do watch the news.
Yes,
I know you read the news, but do you watch it?
I do.
Because every day they're talking about ballots that are corrupt, that are fraudulent.
And millions that are
Sure.
being processed right
Sure,
now.
but you can win a race. Take a look at me. You can win a race by 1%.
But why are you laying the groundwork for that right now? It's
I'm
like
not.
if I
I don't
go
want
play
that to
tennis with
happen.
my husband and I say my ankle's
Do you
hurting
know
right
what?
now.
I don't want that to happen, Savannah. I want it to be clean. I really feel we're going to win.
He's laying the
I want
groundwork
this to
because
be
he's a
clean.
fascist.
Let's get
But it's sort of ironic that you and them talk about the peaceful transfer when I spent 3.5 years fighting off these maniacs, and now it turns out everything's there, that they were the ones that dealt with Russia. And it's too bad. But
Okay.
peaceful transfer, I absolutely want that. But ideally, I don't want to transfer because I want to win.
Yes, and I think that your words will probably reassure some folks. Let's get to our first voter. We've got Jacqueline Lugo.
Yeah, we'll see.
Now, she is, I told you this audience is truly split between y'all. You are leaning Biden. She voted for Clinton in 2016.
Dang,
She's
I like the
registered
Star
as an
Wars looking
independent.
outfit.
Jacqueline, what's your
Kinda
question for
looking
the president?
Rey
And
from
hold the
Star
mic up
Wars.
close and take off your mic because it's hard
Sure.
to hear out here.
Good evening.
How are you?
Welcome to Miami.
Thank you very much. It's beautiful.
Mr. President, if you knew COVID-19, as you told Bob Woodward, in February,
As what?
as you told Bob Woodward in February, was airborne and deadlier than the flu. Why did you only put in place a travel ban from China and not put in place other measures mitigating the spread of COVID-19, potentially saving tens of thousands of American lives?
Well, I did put it in very early, as you know. Joe Biden was 2 months behind me, and he called me xenophobic and racist and everything else because I put it in, and it turned out that I was 100% right. I also put it on Europe very early because I saw there was a lot of infection in Europe, and it's sort of an amazing question, and I appreciate the question and respect the question, but the news doesn't get out the right answer because I put on a travel ban far earlier than Dr. Fauci thought it was necessary, who I like, far earlier than the scientists. I was actually the only one that wanted to put it on, and I did it actually against the advice of a lot of people, including Nancy Pelosi, who had no clue what she was doing, and Biden. When I put on the travel ban, I put it on in January, the end of January. When I put on the travel ban, Joe Biden and others said, "This is ridiculous. You don't do that." Well, Dr. Fauci said I saved thousands and thousands of lives.
Did you not?
I was early. I was extremely early when I put on the travel ban.
Can I ask you, did your national security advisor on January 28th in the Oval Office warn you that this would be the greatest national security risk of your administration? He didn't say it, or you don't remember?
I read it someplace. Maybe Woodward said it or something. But no, he did not say that. But I knew it was a big threat. At the same time, I don't want to panic this country. I don't want to go out and say everybody's going to die. Everybody's
Isn't
going
there a middle ground? You don't have to mislead, but you can.
No, there's not a middle ground. You have to be safe, you have to be vigilant, and you have to be smart.
You're going to like this next couple of voters. It's a mom and a daughter.
Good.
Mom, Barbara, voted for you in 2016. She's leaning to vote for you again. Now, her daughter was too young to vote last time. She's going to vote for her first time in a presidential campaign, and she is leaning Biden. So imagine the dinner table at their house, okay? So, Barbara, why don't you go first and ask your question?
Bienvenido a Miami.
Thank you.
Mr. Trump, as a frontline ER doctor working through the coronavirus pandemic,
Right.
I know firsthand, and I've seen that many hospitals throughout the United States are suffering financial hardships. These economic effects are
around 60% of children's hospitals won't be able to make their financial obligations
across the country.
next year.
Frontline workers are being fired, they're being furloughed, our salaries are being cut. And this is also happening in other economic sectors as well, including the travel industry and hospitality.
Right.
My question to you is, how are you going to get the United States back on track, both in terms of the economy and the pandemic?
So it's happening. We just set a record, 11.4 million jobs. We are going to have a phenomenal third quarter, which will be announced on November 1st, just prior to the big November 3rd day, where I think you're going to see a red wave. But we're going to have a tremendous announcement, I believe. I mean, we're going to find out. But GDP is going through the roof. Jobs, real estate, houses, so many things are happening. So
everything's great right now.
42% unemployment. Look, this was a thing that came into our country, and it happened more than 100 years ago, and it happened now. They were talking about a 42% unemployment rate.
Who was talking about that? I heard 20%.
It just came out at 7.8% unemployment, and people can't even believe it.
Hates this
Our
reporter.
economy is going to be next year.
He hates it, and
he's
not going to answer her questions.
Taxes, which they want to do and kills everything. Our economy is going to be phenomenal next year. We're going to have a phenomenal. And I'll tell you, Savannah, we had the greatest economy in the history of our country last year, including the state of Florida, where we are now, and Pennsylvania, and North Carolina, and Ohio, every place. We had the greatest economy we ever had.
Who are you voting for, Jose?
We saved 2 million lives. We're opening it up. We have a V-shape, and it's coming back. It's coming back very fast. One other thing, we really helped the hospitals. We've sent billions and billions of dollars to the hospitals. In addition, hundreds of millions of masks and
You riding with
gowns.
Biden? Are you
And
based?
we went into the ventilator business because this country was not equipped with ventilators. And I'm not blaming anybody for it. But we're now making thousands of ventilators a month, and we have all we can use. We're sending them all over the world because the world needs them. So they've worked very hard.
Except
and
for
really
the understaffed
very
hospitals.
Thank you. Great question.
Let's talk to Isabella. Put the mic close to your mouth. Okay, go ahead.
Mr. President, my parents are, as you heard, both frontline healthcare workers, and I've seen the physical and the mental tolls that this pandemic has taken on them firsthand, as well as the exacerbation of coronavirus due to Americans who are not wearing masks or participating in social distancing.
Howie Hawkins.
After contracting COVID-19 yourself, has your opinion changed on the importance of mask wearing?
No, because I was okay with the masks. I was good with it, but I've heard many different stories on masks. I mean, I had, being president, you have people, they bring meals, they bring this, and I had an instance recently where a very wonderful person is bringing me a meal, and he's playing with his mask, and he's touching his mask all over the place, and then he's bringing a plate in, and I'm saying, well, I don't know if that's so good. I mean, the good news, I didn't eat it, okay? I decided not to eat it. This was a month ago, but look, you have on the masks, you have two stories. You have a story where they want, a story where they don't want. I am all for it.
I don't get that, because it's just all of your public health officials, your administration, they're in unison about this. No. They're all in unison about it. The University of Washington, which is they have a model that your coronavirus task force relies on, says that if everyone
the economy
wore a mask,
was only great if you had stocks before
COVID-19. Well, what does that mean?
Scott Atkins, if you look at Scott, Dr. Scott, he's from great guy, Stanford. He will tell you
he's
that
not an infectious disease expert.
Oh, I don't know. Look, he's an expert. He's one of the great experts of the world.
But I don't get it, because you have so much power and influence as president. You could go to you could require it at your rallies, and you could say, everyone put on a mask right now. And the University of Washington says you would save lives.
University of Washington, then you have other places say different things. You have a lot. Hey, Dr. Fauci said don't wear a mask, right?
At first, but then everybody agreed.
No, I don't know that he changed his mind. But
yes, he changed his mind.
2 days ago,
he literally said if we wore masks, we would save 100,000 lives by the end of the year.
Wearing. It was neutral on the question of masks.
We're on the same side. I say wear the mask. I'm fine with it. I have no problem. We're on the same side.
Except that he wants people to also not wear masks. God, what a piece of shit. Trump has said, look, Trump might not have said, don't wear the masks, but he's definitely been downplaying the importance of masks. And masks, even if you're wearing a cotton mask, prevent 60% of COVID-19 transmission. Like, it genuinely cuts down the amount of death that we would experience. In fact, it cuts down death more than if we actually had a vaccine. So, like, there's no downside, and people should be required to wear them. But he constantly keeps saying, yeah, some people say wear masks, other people say don't wear masks. It doesn't matter. So, like, every time he's saying wear mask, he also, like, counterbalances it by saying that there are people who, like, respected scientists who say, maybe the mask not so good. Or he'll give, like, that anecdote of, like, yeah, there's this guy touching the mask, so masks aren't that effective, You
gotta get a
like,
4-year degree, but a 4-year degree is super expensive. We have created a system where the ticket to the middle class is a thing.
Also, not accepting presidential pay is not something that presidents are. I don't think that that's something to praise presidents for when they are also neck deep in profiting from their presidency in other ways.
Got some breaking news.
We actually saw a large convoy.
Pay their share of taxes and want to.
Name is Joe. Existing conditions.
That's right.
So your administration is in court right now trying to get rid of that protection.
In order
over the decades, and you had originally said you were going to repeal and replace Obamacare. What is your plan now in 2020 to make healthcare costs affordable for Americans like myself?
So we got rid of the individual mandate on Obamacare, which was the worst part of Obamacare, and now you could actually say it's not Obamacare, because that's how big it was, where you had to pay a fortune for the privilege of not having to pay for bad health insurance. So we got rid of that. That was a big, big thing. And by doing that, and we will always have, by the way, we're always protecting people with pre-existing conditions, and I can't say that more strongly.
I'll believe it when I see it,
bud. We've been able to bring healthcare costs way down. Now, I took over Obamacare, got rid of the individual mandate, made it good, managed it much better. Remember, they had the $5 billion website disaster and all of the problems they had. The problem with Obamacare, it's not good. We'd like to terminate it, and we want a much less expensive health care that's a much better health care, and that's where we're aiming. And if we can do
that's
that,
Medicare
we
for
have
all,
a
by the
very
way.
good chance of doing it. But we've also brought down the price of Obamacare. Problem with Obamacare, it basically is never going to be great, and I want to give great health care. So
okay, but the question was about what is your better healthcare plan, which he doesn't answer. He just talks about how they handicapped Obamacare and how bad Obamacare is, but he never goes into the details of what his replacement plan would be. And it's because they don't have a replacement plan. And you know why they don't have a replacement plan? It's because Obamacare was originally Romney Care. Obamacare is the conservative plan for healthcare, but they have aligned themselves completely against it, so they can no longer take credit for it. So they have no backup plan to improve Obamacare, and they have no backup plan. The only plan they have right now is getting rid of it and having nothing. Okay, that's their plan. Nothing.
And I got to
thank you very much.
on the pre-existing conditions. This is such a big issue for voters.
It is a big issue for me too.
In point of fact,
and to make it clear, the Bears and Alex is a bot. I'm a market socialist. I'm a leftist. I'm voting for Biden, not because I have any great love for Biden or because I think he's like some kind of a lefty genius or anything, but because I think that he's at the very least not a fascist, and I think that Donald Trump is a fascist, which should be evidenced by almost everything he's saying tonight.
Administration is about to go to the Supreme Court to argue to throw out the rest of Obamacare, which
In fact,
includes
I'll put the
protections
14
for
points of
pre-existing
fascism back on
conditions.
screen,
So your
okay?
administration is
You can
in
look them
court
over
right
for
now
yourself while you
trying
listen.
to get rid of that protection.
In order to replace it with a much better health care at a much lower price, and always, under all circumstances, we are going to protect the Republicans. And I mean, maybe I changed the party a lot over the last 3 years, but we will protect people with pre-existing conditions. And Savannah, what I want to do, get rid of the terrible Obamacare. I've already done it to a large extent because, as you know, the individual mandate is gone. That was the worst
You
part.
repealed, but you haven't replaced. Now, you've been in office almost 4 years.
What we
you
have done.
You had both houses of Congress, Senate and House, in Republican hands,
That's
and
right.
there is not a replacement yet.
That's right. I'm sorry, but if you look, we had both houses, and what did we do? We got rid of the individual mandate.
But
That went
the
through the
promise was
legislature.
repeal and replace.
Look, we should be on the same side. I want it very simple. I'm going to put it very simple. We would like to terminate it, and we would like to replace it with something that's much less expensive and much better. We will always protect people with pre-existing
But if you're
conditions.
successful
And
in
here's the
court,
Alex is a bot. Alex is a bot. If you're already so far gone that you're like, fascism isn't bad, then I don't think I can necessarily reach you because you're a fascist, and you've already bought into fascist propaganda. And my goal isn't to reach people like you anyway, but I do hope that you'll stick around and maybe change your mind, okay? But I'll throw up the 14 points of fascism on screen. You can read it while you listen to his talking points and see if you can maybe see the parallels, okay? Oops. Oh no. Oh no.
those pre-existing conditions, that promise will be gone.
If we don't succeed, we are running the remnants of whatever's left because we took it apart. We are running the remnants of whatever is left much better than the previous administration, which ran it very badly. But we'd like to have new health care, much better and much less expensive.
Let me get to question number 5, and you'll like this. He's stuck in traffic. His name is Joe White. He is registered as a Democrat. He says he's leaning toward Biden and voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. And his question was, a second stimulus payment has been broadly agreed upon by the Republicans and Democrats, and yet now we're in October and it's still not passed. Why not use your office to make the second stimulus payment a separate targeted emergency relief package to help Americans weather the pandemic?
Well, we've actually passed 3 packages, and we're on our 4th, and I agree with him 100%. He should vote for me. The problem you have is Nancy Pelosi. She couldn't care less about the worker. She couldn't care less about our people, and we should have a stimulus, and I want a stimulus.
Right, girl,
the
Kelly.
Republicans
Unless
will approve
DeBears
a
is
stimulus.
using
The problem
slurs,
is
she
she
can
doesn't
stay
want
in
to
chat.
do it because she thinks,
Okay?
thinks it's bad for her election.
I don't mind if they disagree
the
with
fact
me.
is, she's wrong, because people know she's in our way. She's not approving it. She doesn't appreciate our people. people, and she doesn't appreciate at all our workers. Nancy Pelosi, we are ready to sign and pass stimulus, but she's got to.
People do not love the back and forth of Washington, but this has been a roller coaster. Back in early October, you one day tweeted,
I guess I didn't read
no
that.
more negotiations until...
I didn't read that as supporting the Michigan terrorists. Wait, the Bears, do you support the Michigan terrorists and, like, the terrorist plot? You need to clarify that, okay? Because if you do, like, we can't have people supporting terrorism on the channel. Okay, like, we just can't. So you need to clarify that. And if you do clarify that that's what you meant, I think you need to accept the warning. Okay, but do you support the Michigan terrorists? Like, the Michigan terrorists? The ones who were plotting to kidnap the governor and subject her to a trial while also conducting attacks on cops and police stations. Okay, so you're just against coronavirus restrictions. I mean, I think that makes you really dumb, but I like that you can stay, okay? Thank you for being honest, okay?
Election until after election day. I'm walking away. Then I think the next couple of days you said maybe we can do something targeted. Then you said I want a big bill, but then Senate Republicans said no, we're not for that. So you're the big deal maker. How come this is so? You yourself have changed positions.
Did you ever hear of a word called negotiation? We're negotiating, okay?
But people's lives are hanging in the balance.
And you know who I'm negotiating against? Nancy Pelosi, because she doesn't want to give the money. We should have stimulus. This was not our people's fault. This was China's fault. And she's penalizing our people. I'm ready to sign a big, beautiful stimulus.
Now, I looked into this a little bit since the segment I did yesterday. And while Nancy Pelosi did come off looking very, very bad in the segment that we covered, like, just absolutely bombed the interview with Wolf Blitzer, made herself look like a clown, looked awful. I looked into it. Apparently, one of the reasons that they're not taking the stimulus offer is because built into the stimulus plan offered by the Republicans is the idea that essentially that businesses shouldn't be held accountable for employees who get sick. So basically, your boss can tell you, go lick that doorknob, and if you don't lick that doorknob, you can get fired, and there's nothing you can do about it, okay? But basically, it's political calculus, and she wasn't going to look good anyway, but she could have, in that interview, turned it around and put the blame for the stall in coronavirus relief on Trump and the Republicans, but she didn't play it very well, and instead came off looking really bad, really cringe, and now is also gaining the ire of people for delaying. But that's politics, friends. And true, Jose, you might be correct. Also, DeBears, I agree. She is bad and cringe and needs to go. But in this case, I jumped to some conclusions about the coronavirus relief that were not accurate. And also, sorry for calling you dumb. I don't think you're necessarily dumb. I think Jose is a little bit closer to the point. I think you are misinformed in getting your information from less than reputable sources, okay?
You saw the other day, I say, go big or go home, right?
That's what
I want it to be big. I want it to be bold. I want the money to go directly to the people.
Senate Republicans with you? They're going to go big?
They'll go.
Big old number?
They'll go. They're going to be
okay,
very
because so far they have not said they would.
Because I haven't asked them to, because I can't get through Nancy Pelosi.
Okay.
If Nancy Pelosi and I, through my representatives or directly, I don't care, if we agree to something, the Republicans will agree to it.
Okay. Our next question comes from...
Well, Alex is a bot. The issue here is that what you're referring to is like a lot of people dying from the knock-on effects of the virus. So, for example, if you have AIDS and you die of an infection of pneumonia, while the pneumonia did technically kill you, the AIDS is really what killed you, okay? Like, it's not super complicated. I'm really sorry for your uncle, who's 77 years old and had the virus. But, like, the virus has caused hundreds of thousands of deaths, and, like, weaseling out with the data, which is what a lot of commentators on the right have been doing to try and make it seem like the coronavirus isn't actually as deadly, is not great, and it's, like, scientifically inaccurate. If they hadn't been infected by the coronavirus, they would still be alive. So they are a casualty of the pandemic. That's how it works. It doesn't matter if they're already old or infirm when they get sick with it, okay? And as for me, like, I've had a lot of friends losing their friends and family. I haven't lost anyone who's close to me yet. I count myself very lucky. But yeah, one of my friends lost his father. Like, yeah, and some of the people who've been dying aren't even that old. People in their 30s, 40s have been passing away. And that's just in my immediate circle. So, like, you know, it affects everyone very differently.
Oh, this is interesting. She voted for Clinton in 2016, but recently changed her registration from Democrat to Independent. She says she's truly undecided. Her name's Becky Lightman. Hello, Becky. What's your question?
The new Ken Bone.
I'm great. How are you?
Nice to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you. So, corporate tax rates are a hot button issue, and you have cut corporate tax rates, and your opponent Joe Biden is planning to raise them.
Right.
A lot of Americans think that corporations don't pay their share of taxes and want to see those tax rates increase. Right. What do you say to those Americans to maybe tell them why you want the corporate tax rate lower and why that helps them?
It's a great question. We've created more jobs than this country has ever created. We're up to 160 million jobs. We were never even close to that number. We were just hitting 160 million jobs. Companies are pouring into our nation because of the tax rate. And if Biden comes in and raises taxes on everybody, including middle income taxes, which he wants to do, you will blow this thing and you'll end up with a depression, the likes of which you've never.
I just need to interrupt to clarify, since we just watched the Biden town hall. Joe Biden has committed to not raising taxes on anyone who's in the middle class, anyone in the working class or the middle class. And he wants to raise the corporate income tax from 21% to 28%, which is what they were going to lower it to anyway, prior to Trump. And I just need to remind everyone that previously, during the most economically successful period in America's history, the corporate income tax was actually around 70%. So, like, we could go much higher on corporate income tax and still be very economically powerful and successful.
Never had. That's what's going to happen. We have something that's really good. The reason we're coming back so strong is because we built a very strong foundation. Companies are moving in. Car companies are moving into Michigan, into Ohio, into South Carolina and North Carolina just today. So what's happening is they're coming in because we reduced the taxes. Our taxes, our corporate taxes, were the highest in the world, and now they're among the lower taxes. They're not the lowest, but they're among the lowest. And what that means is jobs. But also, we're doing a very big, and we've done a very big middle
we're already
income tax package.
We're already in an economic
depression,
guys.
We're going to do the middle income tax package, but it's a great question. And if he comes along and raises rates, all those companies that are coming in, they will leave the U.S. so fast your head will spin. We can't let that happen.
On the subject of taxes, as you know, the New York Times has obtained, it says, years of your tax returns, among other things. It says that you have debts of approximately $421 million that you have personally.
By the way, if you run the government, you can literally say, no, you can't move your companies out of the United States. You can literally do that, you know, if you run the government, or impose penalties on moving your company out of the United States that are so prohibitive that most companies won't do it. Like, there are ways to get around what he's talking about. And if Joe Biden was actually as ruthless as he claims Joe Biden is, Joe Biden would just do those things. But Joe Biden isn't. Joe Biden's actually just a reasonable man who's a milquetoast neoliberal. But this is information filtered through a fascist, so don't be too surprised.
Personally guaranteed and that will come due in the next 4 years. The question is, on behalf of voters, who do you owe $421 million
First of all,
to?
let me answer. What they did is illegal, number one. Also,
the Bears, the biggest companies in the United States right now don't pay any taxes. So, like, the income tax that's being talked about being raised or lowered is literally immaterial to them, whether or not it's high or low. We need to eliminate the ways that they are getting around paying those taxes. And Donald Trump isn't going to do that, because if he was, he would have already done it.
the numbers are all wrong with the numbers they released. And just so you understand, when you have a lot of real estate, I have real estate, you know a lot of it, okay? Right down the road, Doral, big stuff, great stuff. I'm very when I decided to run, I'm very under-levered, fortunately, but I'm very under-levered. I have a very, very small percentage of debt compared, in fact, some of it I did as favors to institutions that wanted to loan me money. $400 million compared to the assets that I have, all of these great properties all over the world, and frankly, the Bank of America building in San Francisco. I don't love what's happening to San Francisco.
Well, do I hear you right? It sounds like you're saying $400 million isn't that much.
One of the biggest office buildings.
But are you confirming that yes, you do owe some $400 million?
What I'm saying is that it's a tiny percentage of my net worth.
That sounds like yes.
And you'll see that soon because.
Okay, so he just confirmed that he's $400 million in personal debt. Cool.
Doing things
to unknown, unclarified institutions and people, I might add. The President of the United States is $400 million in debt, almost $500 million in personal debt to somebody or some places, okay? That's a huge security risk.
You know, we've given, I think it's 108 or 112 pages of financial detail to elections, and, you know, we have to...
Well, the Bears, if I know that if I was $400 million in personal debt to someone, what would you not do to get out of those $400 million in debt? Like, if someone was like, oh, you happen to be the President of the United States? Do me a favor and some of this debt goes away. Like, that's part of the problem. Because, in effect, it means that there is the possibility that he is not working for the American people who elected him. He's working for someone else who has power over him. Like, it's not rocket science. If you owe, like, that's the entire like model behind loan sharks to bears. If you owe loan sharks money, what aren't you gonna do to pay that money back? Right? So they don't come around and break your kneecaps.
As the president, as any politician, you have to file. Nobody ever looks at that. When they do, they see how incredible the company is, but more importantly, they see where this debt is. No, I don't owe Russia money. I owe a very, very small, it's called mortgages. Yeah. People have a house, they put a mortgage.
Any foreign bank, any foreign entity?
Not that I know of, but I will probably, because it's so easy to solve, and if you'd like to do, I
probably.
Like to know who I owe whatever small amount of money.
Now, De Beers, no, he's actually not hard on every country. For example, something I talked about earlier, there was a deal with Turkey that he came down hard on. Good for him. Turkey, in turn, said, oh, okay, we're not going to send our delegation to the Trump Hotel in Washington, D.C., at which point he reversed his decision on Turkey's international affairs, and they then sent a delegation to stay at the Trump Hotel and spent several $1 million there, okay? Like, he personally profits from his relationships around the world. Or just look at, like, Ivanka Trump, the daughter of the president, who suddenly, mysteriously got 26 different patents passed in China. Weird how that happens hand in hand with the diplomatic dealings Trump had with China. Weird. No, Obama didn't own a hotel chain that Turkey sent representatives to stay at to like put money into Obama's pockets, okay? Like, the Bears, you realize like there are specific laws actually against doing these kinds of things. Like, they made Jimmy fucking Carter sell his small home family peanut farm because there were they were worried it might make him biased. However, in the case of Donald Trump, nobody made him sell those things because he basically just refused not to sell or disinvest from his assets. So that means these foreign companies and foreign groups and foreign countries have been able to funnel money to him constantly throughout his administration, which, by the way, makes it more troubling when you then realize it's not just him profiting off of those things. He might be doing it because he's $400 million in debt and needs to pay off that money. So, like, yeah, financial ties are a huge source of national security considerations, okay? Like, that's specifically why we have previously made previous presidents sell off their property. Or not property, but like companies and such.
I want to say two things. Number one, it's a very small amount of money.
Biden's not the president. Biden isn't the president. A lot of politicians profit off of their positions. A lot of them are doing it in scummy ways. But Donald Trump is one of the first people who just said, fuck it, I'm going to keep running my own companies while I'm in office. And he has raked in the money for doing so.
Number two, it's very...
No, the Bears. There's a big difference between being a politician and profiting off of things like investments or whatever, and having a company that foreign governments are just pouring money into so that you'll do them favors. Okay, there's a big difference between those two things. What I would rather he do is what every other president has done before him, which is disinvest from their personal business dealings so that they can focus on being president and focus on doing their best presidential job for the American people instead of focusing on enriching themselves, okay? Like, holy shit, it's not that complicated.
Straight. It's very, very straight. But it's a tiny percentage of the...
You can't stay focused on helping the American people if you're too busy dealing with Turkey and selling out, the American people's tax money in order to enrich your own self, okay? Like, you're using the taxpayers' money to perform foreign favors in order to enrich yourself. There isn't peace in the Middle East. We've literally been bombing Yemen for years. We literally abandoned the Kurds in the Middle East to get slaughtered by Turkish forces, okay? Like, holy shit, there's not peace in the Middle East. Anything that you are consuming that tells you there is really selling you something, because that's not the case. Iran is on the verge of building nuclear bombs because we backed out of the nuclear arms deal we had with Iran. And, like, no, there isn't peace in the Middle East. And the idea that there is absolute lunacy.
Did you ever hear the expression underlevered?
Yeah.
I am extremely underlevered.
Well, here's the thing. You could clear this up tonight by just releasing your tax returns yourself. I mean, that's what I understand. I think people are just wondering.
As you know,
you're
I'm
the only...
It turned out that I am underwritten.
They actually said
excuse me. No, but you
the IRS says that doesn't stop you from releasing.
You accused me of not being under audit previously, and so did other people at NBC, and I am under audit. So that was solved. That's good. I am under audit. No person.
Being under audit, as she tried to point out, doesn't prevent him from releasing his taxes. That's not something that being under audit does. You can still release your taxes if you are being audited by the IRS.
Person in their right mind would release prior to...
No. Da Bears. They were not able to build the bombs prior to, like, during when that deal was signed. They specifically started building fissionable material after we backed out of the agreement. So, like, your conception of this is ridiculous. We had international observers making sure that they weren't building bombs. That was part of the agreement. And now, how were they? We had international observers making sure that they weren't building bombs. That's how. We had people from all over the world making sure that they weren't building bombs. And now we backed out of the deal, so they said, well, you backed out of the deal, so we have no deal, so there's no reason for us not to build bombs now. Okay, but then what? The Bears. This is international diplomacy. They got something out of that deal. They got sanctions lifted on them by participating in the deal. Now there are sanctions on them again, so they started building bombs. Like, it's not that complicated. Well, the Bears, actually, we can trust them better than we can trust the United States, because you know what? Iran was holding up its side of the deal until the United States backed out of the agreement that we signed. So, like, yeah. Why would anyone trust the United States when we're the ones backing out of deals that we previously committed to?
Working out the deal with the IRS. And I'll go a step further. I'm treated very badly by the IRS. They treat me very, very badly. You have people in there from previous administrations. They treat me very badly. But we're under audit. It's very routine in many ways, but we're under audit. They like to change the game, change the rules, do everything. You saw what they did with the Tea Party people. You saw what they did with the religious groups.
But to be clear, there is no law or rule that prohibits you from releasing your tax returns.
Except common sense and intelligence and having lawyers that say, because I would love to release them, and as soon as we come to a conclusion, I will release them, and very gladly. But if you...
I would love to release these tax returns that there's no actual, like, policy saying I couldn't release them, and every other president prior to me has released their tax returns, except for me. I mean, I would love to release them, but, like, I can't. My hands are tied. I mean, common sense. All those other people releasing their tax returns were real suckers. But yeah, I would love to release them. But you know, just we won't.
Go to elections, and if you take a look, you'll see 112. I think it's 112. It talks about the income, which is rather massive. It talks about all of the properties. They have them listed. You can never learn more. But you know what happened? People went there. All the reporters went. There was like a feeding frenzy. This was originally when I filed.
Yeah, Biden released his tax returns already.
I update it every year. My son is here.
They're not very
they
interesting.
Run the company. I don't run the company.
It also says that you paid $750 in taxes in the year you were elected.
Yeah,
is that
that's
true
a
or not?
statutory number. It's a statutory.
But
it's
is
not
that true?
I think it's a filing number. You pay $750. It's a filing
But is that
or
all
filing
you pay?
fee.
Most people here probably paid
No,
more.
I don't know. I can tell you this. If they have my tax returns, as you know, they have to go to jail. It's illegal. But their numbers were wrong. But let me tell you what else. I don't owe money to any of these sinister people. This has been going on for years now. Russia. It turned out to be a hoax.
He earlier said he owed money to people and said it was around $400 million.
And it turned out to be that
he's just contradicting himself and muddying the waters so that
Russia, not me.
People don't know what to think.
So I would not mind at all saying who it is, but it's a very small. When you look at vast properties like I have, and they're big and they're beautiful and they're well located, when you look at that, the amount of money, $400 million, is a peanut. It's extremely underlevered. And it's levered with normal banks. Not a big deal.
All right, let's take a break. We'll get more voter questions.
Yeah,
right
it's
after
just,
this.
you know, he's such a toxic debtor that all the banks in the United States refuse to do business with him. You know, it's just normal business stuff, guys.
A proud nerd and a representative of the emerging America to cable TV news. I hope the great Gwen Ifill and my mom, Philomena Carolina, will look down from heaven and be proud.
You got to get a four-year degree, but a four-year degree is super
Hillary
expensive.
also released
We have
her,
created a system where the ticket to the middle class is a thing that middle-class families have to stress about and borrow for and patch together.
Why is this happening? With Chris Hayes. Subscribe now.
Wish I had water.
We are live in Miami Miami in the middle of a town hall with President Trump. Thank you again for being here. We've got another voter, Adam Schuker. He voted for Clinton in 2016. He's registered as a Democrat.
Jose.
He says he's supporting Biden. Adam, take it away.
Thank you, Savannah. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Adam.
4 years ago, Senate leadership said it was inappropriate to push through a nominee in an election year. Yet they fast-tracked your nominee for the Supreme Court just today. The question I have for you is, what do you say to the voter that thinks it's hypocritical to act in that manner?
Alex, you do realize that they put Hillary Clinton through 13 different investigations of Benghazi? Like, I don't give a shit about Benghazi anymore, okay? That's like super old news, and it was a smear campaign even back when it was new news, okay? But also, this is a dumb question for this guy to ask. Like, yeah, Republicans know how to leverage power. Of course, they were never going to hold to a previous precedent. They were going to ram through anyone if this opportunity opened up anyway. So, like, the idea that why aren't you doing what you said was the noble thing to do is just a dumb question, okay?
And that they can't trust Republicans' word.
You can't trust Republicans' word because Republicans never keep their word, okay? You just can't. Conservatives either understand that Republicans break their word all the time and are, like, complete hypocrites 90% of the time, or conservatives don't understand that and have, like, this naive fantasy that conservatives are always holding up their word, okay?
So when I was elected, and when a president is elected, they're elected for a period of 4 years. And Justice Ginsburg said it best, I think, talking about President Obama having to do with somebody else, that the president is put there for 4 years, not for 3 years. So during this fourth year, it happened to come up, unfortunately, because I had great respect for Justice Ginsburg, but a vacancy happened to come up, and we picked somebody that's outstanding. She has been an absolute star, and I'm extremely proud of it. But again, plenty of time. I mean, there's plenty of time. We're going to do it before the election, but we also have much time after the election, but there's no reason to wait, because it's almost unanimous, it seems to me, certainly within the Republican Party, and frankly, most of the Democrats within closed rooms. I guarantee you that this is an outstanding person, and
any Democrat who's in favor of this happening is not a Democrat. I'm sorry, he's making this up.
Using my fourth term, and you know, if you look at it, that if you put the shoe.
Alex, Trump has been saying that he's just about to release his tax returns, like every week for the past 5 years. He was doing it in 2015 too, okay? He's not going to release his tax returns. He's just not. And there's no compelling reason for him not to. He's just not going to release the tax returns.
You and the other foot, if they had this, they would do it 100%. So there's been 29 times.
Yeah, he started his run for office in 2015, Alex.
When this has happened, all 29 times, a president has done exactly what I've done.
Can I just, to the voters' point, I'll just say that in 2016, you were on another show, actually another morning show, and you were asked whether President Obama should nominate a Supreme Court Justice Merrick Garland. And you said, I think the Senate should wait until the next president and let the president pick. Now, that was 8 months before the election. This is 3 weeks before the election.
I have a lot of respect, by the way.
So you have changed your position on this.
I have a lot of respect for Judge Garland, I want to tell you that. But I'll tell you, the whole ball game changed when I saw the way they treated Justice Kavanaugh. I have never seen any human being, and I'm not just talking about Supreme Court, I have never seen a human being treated so badly with false accusations and everything else. I have never seen anything like it. And you know what? The truth is, Savannah, like it or not, the ball game changed a lot. There has never been anybody treated so badly as...
You'll hear a lot of people have this talking point, by the way, on the right. No, Alex, he started his run in 2015. I don't know what you're talking about here. But you'll hear a lot of Republicans bring up this point of, oh yeah, Kavanaugh was treated so poorly that I changed my mind on this. But they never really say why their mind was changed by that process. Like, they'll say they changed their mind because he was treated badly, but, like, why does that have any bearing on how they're nominating someone now. They don't explain. They never say. They never go into detail. They just say it was such a travesty, because all they're doing is calling back to this thing that conservatives didn't find pleasant, and they are hoping that that memory just makes people angry and not question the idea behind this.
Now, Justice Kavanaugh.
You've mentioned that you would like to see Amy Coney Barrett confirmed to the Supreme Court in case any challenges come up in connection with the election. Yeah. Do you expect her to rule for you?
I think she'll have to make that decision. I don't think she has any conflict at all. You know, a Supreme Court judge does not have, I mean, they can make their own decision. And they actually have additional power to make that decision. It would be totally up to her. I would think that she would be able to rule either for me or against me. I don't see any conflict whatsoever. We have an election coming up. I think it's the most important election in the history of our country. If for any chance, and it probably won't, and I hope it doesn't ever get to the Supreme Court, but if it did, I would think that she would rule one way or the other. I would think so.
But for you think she would rule for you?
I would hope she rules either one way or the other. I would hope so. Yeah, those are the only two options, bud. Come on, dude.
I have no idea.
I mean, of course she'll rule one way or the other, but...
Believe it or not, I never asked her about it. I never talked about it. I didn't talk about any of the obvious things that you could talk about. And I think a lot of people in my position might. But in speaking to a lot of very brilliant people and people that do this for a living, they say it's better not to talk. So I talked to her about life. I talked to her about the fact, would you like to do this? Are you willing to do this? Because it's a tremendous burden. The answer was yes. She is unbelievably well qualified, but I never spoke to her about these various questions.
Let's get our next voter. She's leaning to you, Mr. President. She voted for you in 2016. She is a registered Republican. Her name is Mariah Green. Mariah, what's your question?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President. I'm honored to be with you here tonight, sir, so thank you. I'm a pro-life millennial, and my question for you today is, if Roe v. Wade is ultimately overturned in the future, what protections would be put in place or kept for where the mother's life is in jeopardy in relation to high-risk pregnancies?
Well, again, I'm not ruling on this, and Roe v. Wade is something that a lot of people would say, obviously, you're going to speak to somebody. I also, two other great justices, Justice Gorsuch and Justice Kavanaugh, I never spoke to them about Roe v. Wade. I never spoke to them about election laws. I never spoke to them about anything. And I've done the right thing from a moral standpoint. I don't even know from a legal standpoint, but it was the right thing. I think, depending on what happens with Roe v. Wade, I think that perhaps it could get sent down to the states, and the states would decide. I also think perhaps nothing will happen.
Okay, if it goes down to the states, just so you know, you're gonna have massive swaths of the United States where people won't be able to get abortions unless they're wealthy enough to travel to a different state, which not everyone is. Fun fact, when you make abortions illegal, you actually increase the amount of abortions that people get. There's plenty of data on this. You can go out and look for yourself, but that's true. But people don't actually care about that. They just want to have control over women's bodies.
Not talk to her about it. I think it would be inappropriate to talk to her about it. And some people would say you can talk to her about it. I just think it would be inappropriate.
But what is your preference? Because it agreed, that's not something you should talk to the judge about. But would you like to see Roe versus Wade overturned?
I would like to see a brilliant jurist, a brilliant person who has done this in great depth and has actually skirted this issue for a long time, make a decision. And that's why
This is the answer of a dude who's probably paid off like 10 or 20 women to have abortions.
I did not tell her what decision to make, and I think it would be inappropriate to say right now, because I don't want to do anything to influence her. I want her to get approved, and then I want her to go by the law and I know she's going to make a great decision for our country.
So you
along
running
with
as
the
a
other
pro-life
two people I put
Republican,
there.
most pro-life Republicans would like to see Roe v. Wade overturned and abortion banned.
Many of them would.
What do you
Perhaps
think?
most of them would.
I hear you,
I'm telling
Dr. Joe
I don't
Mama.
want to do anything
I hear
to
ya.
influence anything right now. I don't want to go out tomorrow and say, oh, he's trying to give her a signal, because I didn't speak to her about it. I've done the right thing in so doing. How she's going to rule, you're going to find out perhaps, or you might not find out. I mean, it may never get there. It may never get there. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's
All right,
just
we have
a
another
major
question.
policy
This is
position of the
Cindy
Republican
Velez.
Party for like
She
the
is
last
undecided. She says she's leaning to Biden,
indeterminate
and she
amount of
did vote for
times.
Clinton in 2016. She's registered as a Democrat.
True. I really do like the moderation in this debate. However, there's just no way to hold him accountable. So no matter how much she asks pointed, simple questions, Donald Trump won't answer them appropriately, or will dodge the question, or will just gish gallop until it's time to ask something else.
Democrat. Hi, Cindy. What's your question?
Good evening, Savannah.
Cindy,
Good
thank
evening,
you.
Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
As the mother of a young male of color, I have raised him to respect authority, not only because it's the right thing to do, but also out of fear that he may face profiling or be considered a criminal. As an educator, I've also had similar conversations with my high school students. Mr. President, what will you and your administration do to better prepare our law enforcement officers to work in collaboration with the communities that they serve, and also to protect the lives of innocent Black and Latinos from police brutality and injustice?
Right.
This is a question to a man who has repeatedly said that police are too gentle with suspects and should told people to knock the hell out of them. This is a question towards a guy who, if he had his way, Black people wouldn't be able to live next to white people. He spent a large majority of his life denying housing to Black people in his apartment complexes. Okay, this is a guy who wants police to rough up Black folk as much as possible, okay? And we will talk about the U.S. Marshals in a little bit, because that is I need to talk about that before we finish up. But I need to take a breath and ready myself for what he says here, because I'm sure it's gonna make me upset and mad. Yeah, exact Keeble XR. This is the guy who is so discriminating in his Twitter retweets that he will unironically retweet white power.
Fully understand the question, and I saw everything that you saw over the summer, and it was a terrible thing to watch. We were very strongly, we have a senator named Tim Scott from South Carolina. He came up with a bill that should have been approved. It was great. It was a bill that was strong in terms of law enforcement and strong in terms of enforcing.
By the way, Tim Scott is the only Black Republican senator, okay? They got the only Black guy in the Senate to do the bill on this, okay? Just as a point to throw out there.
The proper thing and doing the proper thing by law enforcement, and the Democrats just wouldn't go for it. They wouldn't go for it at all, and I don't know why, because it was a really great bill.
You know what? Let's take a real quick look at that bill, okay? Tim Scott, police reform. Okay. Let's take a look. No, this is an interview. I'm not sure if I want that. Oh, wait. Here we go. The narrow new police reform bill explained. Okay, overlaps with Democratic proposals, but is more focused on data collection. Interesting. The bill, which is led by Senator Tim Scott, the only Black Republican member of the Senate, is focused on a few key tenets. It aims to improve data collection about police use of force and no-knock warrants, calls on state and local police stations to document police misconduct, and directs the Justice Department to establish de-escalation guidance. While some provisions overlap with Democrats have been included, like the focus on documenting police misconduct, the scope of the bill, dubbed the Justice Act, is notably more limited than that of the Democrats' Justice in Policing Act. Among the differences, both Democrats and Republicans seek to condition federal funding to state and local agencies on banning chokeholds, for example, but Republicans stopped short of imposing a federal ban on chokeholds. Additionally, the GOP bill does little to curb qualified immunity, a change in Democrats' proposal that would make it much easier to hold police officers legally accountable for misconduct. Scott has said in the past that while some Republicans are open to considering it, such a move is a poison pill for many GOP members. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what qualified immunity is, qualified immunity is essentially the doctrine that holds police to a different standard of the law than average citizens. So, for example, a police officer is actually treated much less harshly than the average citizen, just in general. Despite the fact that police officers have more authority, have more training, have the authorization to use deadly force, qualified immunity essentially means that they are treated with kid gloves when it comes to the law, if they break it. So it's a bit complicated, but essentially I would assume that this is the major difference and the major reason that Democrats voted against Tim Scott's proposal. Overall, it actually looks fairly decent as far as Republican proposals go. The one thing I would say is that in the case of what happened with Breonna Taylor and all of the protests around the country, I would guess that the political calculus that Democrats did was that it just wasn't enough in the face of the nationwide and historic protests. So yeah, so that's what he's talking about. That gets into a little bit of why they would knock it down, I think.
But I do have to say this, and some people don't like it when I say it, but a lot of people agree. I have done more for the African American community than any president, with the exception of Abraham Lincoln. Criminal justice reform, prison reform, historically black colleges and universities. I got them funded. They were on a year-to-year basis. They could have been put out of business as soon as our country had a little bad year. They would have said, "I'm sorry, we're not going to fund you." I got them 10-year funding and financing, and more than they even asked for. I became very friendly with a lot of the heads, but we've done more. And of course, opportunity zones. But criminal justice reform, everybody said it could not be done. President Obama and Biden never even tried to do it. They never.
No one said that criminal justice reform could never be done. Literally, we do this all the time. We literally deal with criminal justice reform all the time. Biden has explicitly done a lot of high-profile votes on criminal justice reform. Obama didn't do enough in that regard, IMO, but also he's not really answering her question about having police work more closely with communities of color.
Even tried, but I say that, and I say it often. I'll say it loud, and I'm very proud of it. And I have a great relationship because of what I've
always,
done
Keebler.
with
Always.
the African American community. I'm very proud of it.
Let's go to our next question. We have Paulette Dale. She leans slightly to Biden. She voted for Clinton in 2016. She's registered as a Republican. Paulette, what's your question?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
Paulette looks like she's into some hippy-dippy shit.
Thank you.
What?
Thank you.
So
What?
he does. You're
What?
so handsome.
Why is she
when you
getting
smile.
claps?
Okay. As
What?
the daughter of immigrants to the United States who fled Eastern Europe due to religious persecution, the United States immigration policies are very personal for me.
Right.
Surveys show that most Americans and the majority of Republicans support the Dreamers program. So my question for you, Mr. President, is if you are elected to a second term, do you expect to pursue your previous efforts to cut the DACA program?
Yeah.
Why or why not?
And the DACA is somewhat different than Dreamers. You understand that, and you understand it better than anybody probably in this room. Where do you come from, by the way, originally? Where?
My grandparents were from Russia and Poland.
That's very good. Okay. So we are going to take care of DACA. We're going to take care of Dreamer. It's working right now. We're negotiating different aspects of immigration and immigration law. We've built now over 400 miles of border wall, southern border. Mexico's working very closely with us. We have the strongest border we've ever had. We want people to come into our country. They have to come in legally. But we are working very hard on the DACA program, and you will be, I think, very happy over the course of the next year.
Thank you.
Because I feel the same way as you do about it.
But by the way, just so you know, when she talked about DACA and Dreamers, the Dreamers are the people affected by DACA. So just so you know, in terms of what he was just talking about, he doesn't know what he's talking about either. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President, in point of fact, the DACA program, there are, under your administration, no new applicants are allowed. And in fact, the DACA recipients now have to renew every year as opposed to every 2 years. So in fact, the DACA program has been curtailed by your administration.
Well, what happened is because of the pandemic, much changed on the immigration front. Mexico is heavily infected, as you know, and we've made it very, very difficult to come in.
No. They curtailed the DACA Act before the COVID-19 outbreak happened. They curtailed it a long time before that. And on top of that, Mexico doesn't have more infected people than us. We are way more infected. The United States is more infected than Mexico is. In fact, I'm pretty sure Mexico closed its own borders to the United States. Yeah. Yeah, look at this. This is a USA Today article, okay? So, as mainstream as it gets, U.S. borders with Canada and Mexico to remain closed through October 21st to slow the spread of COVID-19. Yeah. Good gravy. Just take a look. Yeah. So, just to put it into perspective here, Mexico currently has around 829,000 cases of COVID-19, which sounds like a lot. Let's take a look at United States. Yeah, we currently have 8 million. We literally have almost 10 times more cases than they do. So, like, just some food for thought about who has the more infected population, okay?
Because of the pandemic and other reasons, and crime. But we have a very strong border right now, and we have to keep it that way. But we want people to come into our country, but they have to come in through a merit system, and they have to come in legally. And people are very, very happy with it. You haven't heard any complaints about that. But what happened is because of the pandemic, we have to be extra cautious.
You have been promising this immigration bill since, well, at least July, when you told my colleague on Telemundo it was coming, but nothing's come yet.
It's very happy. The fact is, we got rid of catch and release, which is a disaster. You know, you catch somebody, they could be a murderer, they could be a rapist, and we're supposed to release them into our country. These are the laws that I inherited. We ended that program. Now, I think you're going to see something very, very good. The whole immigration, if you look at what's going on, people used to pour into our country, and especially during the pandemic. I think even you, Savannah, will be very impressed.
Sir, we have about 30 seconds left. I think about people sitting out there tonight. There are some who love you. Some of them are sitting right around here, and some who will never vote for you. But there are people in the middle. There are people who aren't sure.
That's right.
There are people who want to know why they should give you a second chance and how you might improve in a second term. 30 seconds, what would you say to them?
Because I've done a great job. We had the strongest economy in the world. We closed it up. We are coming around the corner.
Yeah, just an FYI for what just so you know that he's full of shit about DACA and COVID being related. Here's a little thing. Trump ends DACA program. No new applicants accepted. What year? When's this from? September 5th, 2017. Wow. I didn't realize we've had COVID for years now. I know it's felt like it, but I didn't think that it actually was. Huh, weird. Strange. What a wild and crazy world. This man is full of lies.
The vaccines are coming out soon, and our economy is strong. We are at a level with jobs like we've never been before. We've rebuilt our military. We've rebuilt our borders. We had no borders. We had no nothing. We've rebuilt so much. We've given you the greatest tax cut in the history of our country, greatest regulation cut, equally as important. And we created new levels of jobs that nobody thought was possible. And next year is going to be better than ever before.
And then we handled the coronavirus so poorly that we had the single largest loss in jobs seen since the Great Depression.
I got to leave it there. I got a wrap from the control room. Mr. President, thank you for your time.
And also hundreds of thousands of people died.
Thank you for listening to the voters' questions. That concludes our town hall. We do want to thank the president again, as well as our audience in hot Miami and all of you watching at home.
You did your best. Applause for the moderator.
Tonight in Nashville, a second and final presidential debate moderated by our own Kristen Welker.
All right. Well, I can say that I'm glad that I had a drink before this this lovely town hall, okay? That was rough as fuck. How we feeling, peep? We did get through it. Yeah, I mean, she was doing the best she could in the given situation, but she also, you know, it was trying to wring water out of the stone, you know? She wasn't going to have much success. But hey, you know, Twitter isn't the only one who loves the mods. I love the mods too. Thank you, mods, for being mods and helping me clean up chat and being pretty rad, okay? Oh, right, I need to give final thoughts. Basically, I think that at every turn, it should become clearer to you, especially now that we've gone over the 14 points, and I will do so again right now for those of you who aren't familiar with them. Umberto Eco is a prominent philosopher who wrote extensively about fascism, and he grew up underneath Mussolini in Italy. So he knows a thing or two about fascism. And he has distilled what is largely considered to be some of the best definitions of fascism, and distilled the definition of fascism into the iconic 14 points. So there are 14 elements of fascism that go into the ideology, and people have more or less of them, the more or less fascist they are. So essentially, on display in this is we had the cult of tradition, you know, the appeal to a better time, the MAGA, you know, the fictional creation of a mythological past where things were idyllic. And then we have the rejection of modernism. Oh yeah, we've been putting check marks on that list since 2015. We have the rejection of modernism, so like the Enlightenment values, essentially. Things like justice and what's the word I'm looking for? Enfranchisement of voters. Ideas along those lines. We have the cult of action for action's sake. Action being considered a good no matter what the outcomes are. And the idea that thinking is a form of emasculation. So like, yeah, Trump's not a big intellectual, okay? And he doesn't trust intellectuals. And he constantly appeals to some sort of fictional intellectual that doesn't necessarily exist. Like you notice, like during this town hall, he got called on mask use and how experts like the consensus of experts is that you should wear masks to reduce the spread of this illness. But then he appeals to, but not everybody says that because he's appealing to, anti-intellectualism, okay? Then you have disagreement is treason. All I have to do is look into my YouTube comments on the video segments that I put up on YouTube to see conservatives literally calling for the deaths of Trump's political opponents, who he has explicitly, by the way, called for the arrest of. Just the other day on Maria Bartiromo's show, he called for the arrest of Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and Hillary Clinton. So his main political rivals. Yeah, sadly, I do not know how to implement Twitch chat usage. If you go on YouTube, look up Riverboat Jack, same as my handle on here, and you should find me. But I'm really sorry. I'm relatively new to Twitch, so I do not know how to set up these shortcuts and fancy schmancy things that you guys all take for granted. Inspector Wells, that might be really nice of you if you did help. Yeah, so you have disagreement is treason. You have fear of difference, aka fear-mongering about the hordes pouring over our borders, which he did right there at the end when he was talking about DACA. You have the appeal to social frustration, where he's talking about the frustrations of the coronavirus restrictions. You have the obsession with a plot, which you can see in his supporters when it comes to like QAnon, but also when it comes to him and it comes to like, yeah, the Democrats, they tried to overthrow me. Like there's some vast conspiracy of like, and it's not just him being a complete dumbass all the time. The enemy is both strong and weak. His enemies are both libtard cucks, but also strong enough to ruin any conservative. Which you could hear, by the way, we covered some Trump on Rush Limbaugh's show. There was a segment where they're literally talking about how Democrats can ruin anybody that they choose, which just isn't true. Then pacifism is trafficking with the enemy. So basically, staying out of conflict is gay. And then you have contempt for the weak. Basically, anyone who's poor is generally hated by the Republican Party. Or if they're brown. If they're brown and poor, even more. Let's see. Everybody is educated to be a hero. He was just recently talking about patriotic education being superior to, like, education based on facts. Machismo and weaponry. Again, in the recent Rush Limbaugh interview, he was talking about how the United States has the biggest weapons that like you've never seen before. Will wipe you off the face of the map. And then you had selective populism. So basically, well, money for my supporters. No money for those stinking liberals. And I think you can kind of see that in his coronavirus response, where he didn't really take any action against coronavirus until it became apparent that it wasn't going to be a problem just for the blue states like he initially assumed. And then finally, Fashion speaks newspeak, which essentially is you can recognize by a simplified vocabulary, very simple syntax, which is basically how Trump speaks all the time. He sounds like a 5-year-old. He repeats things like 3 or 4 times. It's pretty obvious in that regard. So yeah, Trump checks off all of these boxes, and in just like the last several days, if you've been paying attention to what he's been doing and his appearances, he's basically checked off all of these boxes. His supporters are similarly bought into all of these ideas and fulfill his fascist ideology and go off after those goals and act as apologists for him. And I think we saw more of that in this town hall. And the fact that like he was very clearly not giving any good answers and dodging questions, even from the people who were asking him directly or who were really nice. And he'd pivot off of like the topic to talk about something else repeatedly. Like by every metric, I think that this town hall was an absolute disaster, but it really, really doesn't matter because for everyone who's already bought in, he did great. He did absolutely fantastic. For everyone who has already bought into his rhetoric, they were there for him 100%. They think he is a very smart boy who is very rich and powerful, and that there's no problem if he owes $400 million to people. Despite the fact that like if they owed like $400, like most of his supporters, if they owed $400 to someone, they would like suck a dick for it. You know, like it would be a big deal. It would be a big deal if they owed that much money to someone, and exponentially more if it was 4,000. Like, guys, there are literally people who will murder other people for $4,000. What would you do if you owed somebody $400 million personally? I feel like it should be pretty self-evident what a big problem it is if the president of the United States has such a big debt hanging over their head. So, yeah, it's Trump is a fascist, and this town hall, I think, really highlighted that. It was frustrating watching him give answers that just weren't to the point. I applaud the moderator for trying. She did as good as she could have done, but it really didn't matter.